Katie, my wife, and I, Dave, met during our college years and tied the knot shortly after graduation. Our journey followed the typical path of many married couples' kids, a cozy house, and a hefty mortgage. Katie took a break from her career to raise our children until they were old enough, then she returned to her work in interior design. She's quite the looker, and I'm sure she gets some playful teasing at the office, but I've always trusted her loyalty in our marriage. Katie's sense of humor is a bit mischievous, which sometimes caused little hiccups in our relationship. We had 2 kids, a son named Mike and a daughter named Jenna. When everything unraveled, Mike was 21, living in his own apartment nearby and working as a mechanic. Jenna, 19, was away at a state university, about 150 miles from home. With the kids out of the nest, Katie and I eagerly anticipated a peaceful retirement, dreaming of travel and eventually spoiling some grandkids. Our intimate life was what I'd call typical. Our bond deepened over the years, though our nightly and weekend escapades dwindled to a couple of times a week, which was fine by me but seemed to lessen Katie's interest as well. Over time, I got pretty good at knowing how to please Katie, but there's always a hitch in every story. Ours came in the form of new neighbors moving in about 5 years ago. Jake and his wife, Sarah, settled in next door, and we quickly became friends. The issue with Jake was his obsession with practical jokes. He'd prank anyone within reach, much to my annoyance. I often found myself as his target, and what irked me even more was Katie's enjoyment of his antics, especially when they were at my expense. I tried talking to her about it, even joining in a few times, but she never backed down. Over time, I sensed Jake's interest in Katie might be more than just friendly. Whenever we hung out, he and Katie shared laughs over his crude jokes, leaving Sarah and me to awkwardly smile along. In public, Sarah and I were often embarrassed by their behavior. One vivid memory was a day at the beach when Jake started mocking some surfers, and Katie joined in. Sarah and I were left stunned, our protest drowned out by their boisterous laughter. Then came the incident that pushed things over the edge. We were at Jake and Sarah's place, Sarah and I relaxing in the backyard while Katie went inside with Jake to get some drinks. We chatted for a bit until we realized they'd been gone a while. Concerned, we headed indoors and found no one in the kitchen. Just as we began to worry, they came out of the living room, arms around each other, giggling. Jake had lipstick smears on his collar and face, while Katie's lipstick was smudged and her hair was a mess. Sarah and I were stunned, standing there with our jaws on the floor. "Hey folks, sorry for the holdup. I was just showing Katie some of my artwork," Jake said, acting oblivious to their disheveled state. Sarah and I were speechless, our shock palpable. "Jake's got some amazing pieces. You should see them, right, Sarah?" Katie added with a mischievous grin. Finally, I found my voice. "What's going on here, Katie? Why does Jake have lipstick all over him and you look like you've been kissing?" "Oh, I just got really into admiring Jake's prints. I guess I got carried away." "You're not upset, are you?" she asked, trying to stay composed. As I looked at their faces, I realized Jake had that familiar smirk he gets before a prank, and Katie was avoiding my eyes, trying not to laugh. My anger flared. Still confused, Sarah finally spoke up. "Jake, if you think you can fool around with another woman in our home, you've got another thing coming." As Jake and Katie burst into laughter, Sarah seemed to catch on, though she smiled awkwardly. I, however, couldn't hide my frustration. "One of these days you two will take it too far, and it won't end well." "Oh, come on, sweetheart, it's just a joke." "If you saw your faces, you'd laugh too," Katie said between giggles. "Let's all have a drink and laugh it off," Jake suggested, heading to the kitchen with Katie following, still chuckling. Sarah and I exchanged resigned looks and followed them, shaking our heads. "One day, Sarah, they're going to cross a line," I reiterated. "One of these days, their jokes will backfire and someone will get hurt." Sarah nodded in agreement. That night, back home, I could tell Katie knew I was still upset, especially about her part in the prank. "I'm really sorry, honey," she said. "I got carried away. Nothing serious happened. I just smeared some lipstick on him and messed up his hair. We never thought you'd be so upset. We were about to stop when you and Sarah came in. Are you still mad?" It was just a joke. I'm trying not to be, Katie, but you have to stop getting involved in Jake's pranks. Seeing you like that nearly gave me a heart attack. You know how important loyalty is to me, I said firmly. I understand, Dave. I value loyalty just as much and would never do anything to hurt you. Please believe me, Katie pleaded, leaning in for a passionate kiss. Forgive me. A couple of weeks later, we were back at Jake and Sarah's house for dinner on a Saturday night. Just as we finished eating, a call came in that Jake mistakenly thought was for Sarah. Sarah worked as an ER nurse at a local hospital. After hanging up, Jake turned to Sarah. It's the ER. There's been a bad car wreck and they need you ASAP. Damn, let me change and head out, she said. 10 minutes later, Sarah was on her way to the hospital. Once she left, Jake turned to me. Hey, Dave, can you give me a hand with a project in the basement? Sure, what do you need, I asked, getting up to join him downstairs. Katie remained silent, avoiding eye contact, which seemed odd but didn't immediately raise any alarms. I need you to hold something for me while I fix it to the ceiling. It's not too heavy, but I can't hold it up and attach it at the same time, and Sarah is too short for this. Sounds straightforward, I replied. Trust me, it is. It'll only take a minute, Jake assured me. As we descended the stairs, he directed me to a metal support post near the furnace. He took a small metal box with a power cord off his workbench and lifted it towards the ceiling between the support post and the furnace. Katie followed us down and was watching with a peculiar smile. I didn't think much of her presence or her odd grin at the time. Now I need you to hold this while I attach it, Jake instructed. What's this for? I questioned, lifting my hands to grasp the box. With Jake between the pipe and the furnace, I had to wrap my hands around the pipe to press the box against the ceiling. I'll explain in a sec, but let me grab my tools first, he said, disappearing behind his desk. Moments later, I felt two quick clicks as something hard and metallic closed around my wrists. I was handcuffed to the pipe. Shocked, I turned to see Jake putting his arm around Katie's waist as they looked at me, smirking. What the hell is going on? I demanded. Get these damn cuffs off me, Jake. Sorry, buddy, can't do that. Katie's got a keen interest in my prints, and we thought we'd take a closer look. We don't need you or Sarah around for this, he explained as they ascended the basement steps. Katie exaggerated her hip sway as they left. Let me loose, Jake. This is going too far. You'll regret it, I yelled after them. Relax, darling. I just want to admire some artwork. Katie chuckled as they disappeared, leaving me struggling with the handcuffs. I realized the hopelessness of my situation as I strained against the pipe anchored firmly in the concrete floor and secured to a steel beam overhead. Listening intently, I heard them move into the master bedroom directly above me, accompanied by Katie's excited giggles. Shoes thudded onto the carpet, followed by hurried whispers and the rustling of clothes. Jake, I want you so bad, Katie whispered urgently. My fury mounted as I struggled with the handcuffs, imagining them getting intimate. The bed began to creak, and I cursed the restraints and my unfaithful wife. My wrists grew raw from my relentless efforts, blood seeping from the abrasions. Emotions churned within me as Jake grunted and Katie moaned in unison, then silence blanketed the upstairs. I lay on the cold cement floor, hands clasped around the pipe, feeling a profound sadness. That was amazing, Jake. I'll have to admire your work again sometime, Katie exclaimed. Let's get dressed and check on Dave downstairs, Jake replied. Sarah might come back soon from that fake call I made, and I'd rather she not find us like this. Minutes later, footsteps echoed on the basement stairs. I didn't lift my gaze as they approached. Oh, damn, look at his wrists. They're all bloody, Katie gasped. Honey, it was just a prank. Nothing happened. Oh, God. I'm so sorry. Jake, hurry and unlock the cuffs so we can tend to his wrists. I never thought he'd take it this hard. Tears streamed down my face as Jake fumbled with the handcuff key. Jake, hand Katie the key before you unlock me and run. Once I'm free, you'll regret ever being born, I warned, glaring at him. He met my gaze wordlessly, passing the key to Katie as he edged toward the stairs. Fear flickered in his eyes while Katie began unlocking the handcuffs. Once the cuffs were off, I heard Jake's truck revving up, tires screeching as he sped away. Rising to my feet, I peered down at Katie, still crouched on the floor, fear etched across her face. You better find somewhere else to stay tonight, or I might seriously hurt you. Call before you even think about coming home." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she grasped the magnitude of the pain she'd caused. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. It was just a prank. We didn't do anything." "Katie, I don't want to hear excuses about it being a joke ever again. To me, it's as if you cheated, and that's all that matters now, from here on out. I'll treat this as betrayal and infidelity. Expect a call from my lawyer soon. We are done," I declared, storming up the stairs. "No, Dave, please, nothing happened," Katie shouted from the basement. "What do I tell the kids?" Ignoring her, I headed straight for the front door. Just as I was getting into my car, a frantic Sarah pulled into their driveway, tires screeching. "Where is my worthless husband? There was no accident, and I didn't need an ambulance," she exclaimed, stepping out of the car. Suddenly, she noticed my wrists. "Dave, what happened? Look at your wrists. Let me help." Jake and Katie pulled another one of their stupid pranks, I sighed. "Sarah, they've gone too far. I'm divorcing Katie." "Oh no, what did they do?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. "You'll hear it from them. I'm going home to take care of my wounds. Once there, you can tell Katie she'll find her belongings on the porch. If she wants back in, she'll need a court order." "Oh God, what did they do?" Sarah wailed, rushing into the house in distress. I climbed into my car, fuming with anger. When I got home, I cleaned my wrists with antibacterial soap, applied ointment, and bandaged them carefully. I gathered Katie's belongings, packing them into plastic bags and placing them outside. Ignoring the incessant ringing phone, I focused on my task. After securing the house, I undressed and lay on the bed, my mind racing too much to sleep despite my exhaustion. The next morning, the phone rang again, but I ignored it. After showering and eating breakfast, I changed my bandages. Around 1,000, the doorbell rang, and I saw Sarah at the doorstep. I invited her in. "They really went too far this time, didn't they?" she remarked as she stepped inside. "Yes, they did," I replied. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm filing for divorce." "They claim nothing happened, just another one of their pranks." "Katie really wants to talk to you," Sarah mentioned. "In my mind, they did it. And as far as I'm concerned, that's reality." "You'll schedule a meeting with a divorce attorney first thing Monday," I said calmly. "You're really upset. Can't you wait until you've cooled off before making such a drastic decision? You've spent almost 24 years together. Don't you want to try and save your marriage?" she reasoned. "I won't tolerate betrayal. I've warned Katie countless times, and to me she crossed the line." "It's over," I declared. "But they insist nothing actually happened. They just made it look that way," Sarah argued. "Their words mean nothing. It felt real to me," I explained, "and they can't prove it didn't happen, so I have to go with my perception." She showed no respect for me. "Can't you hold off and seek counseling?" "Katie's devastated by this," Sarah pleaded. "I warned her before, but she didn't listen," I retorted. "I've made my decision. Let the lawyer handle it. If you're okay with Jake's involvement, that's your choice, but he better stay away from me. I haven't decided what to do about Jake yet, but I hate to see our friendship end over this. Jake feels genuinely sorry and asked me to pass on his apologies to you." "Tell him our friendship is over," I insisted. "While I'd like to stay friends, Sarah, I think it's best if we don't see each other while you're still with him." "Is there anything I can tell Katie to give her hope for your forgiveness? If she can prove she didn't sleep with Jake, I'll consider it. I don't trust either of them saying it was just a joke. I feel like it happened, and that's enough for me." "Okay, Dave. I'll let her know. I'll miss you." "He'll miss you too, Sarah. Let me load Katie's things into your car so you can take them to her. I assume you still have space? She's moving in with her sister this afternoon. Her sister lives on the other side of town. She's a widow and lives alone, so there's space for Katie, maybe indefinitely." After loading Katie's belongings into Sarah's car, I waved her off and returned to the house. First, I called a locksmith to change the locks. It occurred to me that if I went to work on Monday and Katie changed the locks, I'd end up locked out. I arranged for the locksmith to come that same day. Then I unplugged my phone and switched off my cell. I spent the entire day doing household chores until the locksmith arrived. Once he left, I drove to the local supermarket, stocking up on frozen dinners to get me through the week. Returning to my now lonely home, I felt the absence of Katie after nearly 24 years together. However, my anger towards her and what she and Jake had done still lingered. Around 7:30 that evening, while watching TV, the doorbell chimed. Peering out the window, I spotted Katie's sister Lisa at the doorstep. "Hello, Lisa," I greeted as I opened the door for her. "Hi, Dave. Can we talk?" she asked. "Sure, come on in," I invited her, leading her to the living room. "Would you like something to drink?" I offered. "A Diet Coke would be nice," she replied. After fetching the drinks, I returned to the living room. "I suppose you know why I'm here," she began, taking a sip. "Yes, but if you're here to argue for her return, you're wasting your breath," I said firmly. "No, she told me everything." "How are your wrists?" she asked. "They're healing." "No infection," I replied. "Katie's a wreck. She's barely sleeping, especially since you won't talk to her." "She asked me to deliver a message," Lisa said. "All right, I'll listen, but I can't promise anything," I said, sitting back. "First, she wants you to know she loves you deeply and regrets her actions," Lisa conveyed. "Okay, and?" I prompted. "She's willing to take a lie detector test to prove she's telling the truth. She swears nothing happened with Jake or anyone else," Lisa explained. This was a new approach I hadn't thought of. I pondered it while Lisa watched me. "It's an idea, but I have conditions. First, even if she passes, it doesn't guarantee reconciliation. Second, Jake has to take the same test and match her results. Third, I need to approve the questions. Lastly, I want pay for the tests," I stipulated. "That seems fair, but wouldn't you consider reconciliation if the tests prove their honesty?" Lisa asked. "No, the damage is done. Even if I consider taking her back, it will take a long time to rebuild trust," I stated. "Understood. I'll let her know. I was angry with her for being so reckless, but she looks so miserable. She knows she messed up and is hurting deeply. I'll give her something to help her sleep tonight." "She also told your kids what happened. They were pretty upset, and she hasn't stopped crying since," Lisa said, standing up. "Thanks for the drink," she added as she left. "No problem, Lisa. Thanks for your concern," I replied, closing the door behind her. After she left, I reflected on everything. Some of my initial rage had subsided, allowing me to think more clearly. I poured myself a glass of bourbon and wandered the house, reminiscing about our life together. Did I really want to throw it all away? My thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. Peering out the window, I saw Jenna standing there, looking upset. I opened the door and she stormed inside. "What's with the locks, Dad? And why haven't you been answering calls? I drove 150 miles to get some answers," she demanded. "I'm sorry, Jenna. I didn't mean to avoid you. I heard from Aunt Lisa that she told you what happened." "Yeah, and I'm furious with you for kicking Mom out over a joke. Can't you forgive her and let her come home?" she pleaded. When she told me what happened, I realized she was incredibly foolish. "Jenna, this isn't just about a joke. I've warned her multiple times about her pranks with Jake, but she ignored me. I didn't get much from Mom on the phone, but I gathered it was meant to be harmless." "What was so bad about it?" Jenna asked. I explained everything, from the earlier lipstick prank to the recent incident in the basement, showing her the raw scars on my wrists. "Daddy, this is terrible." "Is that when you told her to leave?" Jenna asked, her voice shaking. "Yes, it seemed like they were being intimate. It sounded real, and I know your mom sounds. Either they were acting or it happened. I believe it did, and that's my reality unless she proves otherwise. I suggested she take a lie detector test, and Jake too. If they pass, I'll consider believing them. But she hurt me deeply by thinking I'd find this funny. I might not be able to forgive her," I explained. "I'm so sorry about this, Dad. I hope you and Mom can work through it because I love you both." "Despite what she did, I still want us to be a family," Jenna said, her eyes welling up. "I'm trying, Jenna, because I miss her. But her lack of respect for me makes it hard," I admitted. "Okay, Dad, I understand now. I'm going to visit Mom and try to calm her down. I'll probably stay at Aunt Lisa's tonight and head back to school tomorrow. Please keep your phone on so I can reach you. Eric also wants to talk to you." "He's working upstate," Jenna said, hugging me tightly before leaving. "And he tried to call you after Mom contacted him." "All right, Jenna. I'll turn the phones back on once you leave. Come here for a hug." I embraced her tightly, the mix of comfort and pain almost overwhelming. Jenna had always been my little girl, and now, more than ever, I needed her support. "Goodbye, Dad," she said, opening her car door. I waved as she drove off, then returned inside, resuming my solitary drink and turning my phones back on. The house felt emptier than ever, a hollow shell of what it used to be. A few days later, Lisa called with updates. Katie had agreed to my terms for the lie detector test, and Jake had also consented. As a gesture of remorse, Jake even offered to cover the cost of his test. Lisa provided me with the contact information for the testing administrator. While my anger toward Katie had somewhat subsided, the deep hurt remained. How could she participate in such a demeaning prank if she truly loved me? I began to doubt her claims of wanting reconciliation. It boiled down to whether I was willing to stay in a marriage without trust if the test confirmed no physical involvement. Katie tried reaching out to me multiple times, but I ended the calls as soon as I heard her voice. Lisa acted as an intermediary, conveying Katie's apologies and desire to make things right. However, I stood firm, waiting for the lie detector results before making any decisions. During this period, our son Mike urged me to forgive his mother and let her return home. Despite my explanations, he couldn't grasp the depth of my pain and kept pleading for her return. I worried that our relationship might suffer if we divorced. Thankfully, our daughter Jenna showed more understanding and support. After getting the test administrator's details from Lisa, I contacted some legal and law enforcement acquaintances for advice. Reassured by their recommendations, I set up an appointment with the administrator. The next day, I learned that Katie and Jake had already scheduled their tests with Jack Harlan. They had also designated me as an interested party authorized to control the questions asked. I informed my boss about needing personal time and visited Jack Harlan's office. After explaining the situation, we discussed the questions he would pose to determine whether Katie and Jake had engaged in any inappropriate activity. Jack assured me he would ask the same questions to both, compile their responses, and provide a final report. Matching test results would confirm no inappropriate activity. If the tests indicated lying, trust in Katie would be destroyed, leading to divorce. Back at work, I felt reassured that clarity was near. However, I knew tough decisions awaited. Over the next 3 days, I stuck to my routine, staying late to avoid returning to an empty house. I ate dinner at a nearby diner, followed by whiskey at home, where sleep remained elusive. The absence of Katie's warmth was a constant weight. On the morning of the test, uncertainty lingered, but a clear lie detector report could pave the way for Katie's return, with the understanding that such insensitive pranks would never happen again. The calm was shattered when the phone rang just after 11 a.m. It was Sarah. "Dave, it's Sarah. I found something important about Jake. Can you come over now?" Her tone was urgent, prompting me to rush next door. I entered through the front door and heard Sarah's voice from the office. Inside, she was at her computer, looking worried. "Dave, you need to see this," she said, pulling up a chair. "Jake's been secretive since Tuesday. I caught him quickly minimizing something on the monitor a couple of times. Also, he leaves the room when he's on the phone. I'm sure he spoke to Katie yesterday. This is my first chance to check our computer without him around." She clicked on the browser, revealing his search history. My heart sank as I saw several searches on how to beat a lie detector test. Sarah and I read through the pages her husband had visited. After absorbing enough, we moved to the living room to discuss our findings. Our conversation continued until we heard Jake's car pull up outside. He entered with a wary look, sitting on the couch opposite us. If I hadn't been observant, I might have missed his slight limp, favoring his left leg. "Jake, I believe you passed the test with flying colors, honestly," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I suspected something wasn't right that day," I said, catching a puzzled look from Sarah. Realizing I hadn't shared my plan with her yet, I continued. "If you and Katie swear to never pull another stunt like this again, I'll consider forgiving you both. Maybe even skip reading the lie detector report." Relief washed over Jake's face as he readily agreed with a smile. I stood up and approached him. As he extended his hand, I stepped closer and firmly planted my foot on his right leg. His face turned pale and he let out a piercing scream, collapsing back onto the couch. Frantically, he used both hands to free his foot from under mine, eventually tearing off his shoe. Sarah and I watched as the shoe came off, revealing a blood-soaked sock. He continued to groan in pain. Glancing at Sarah, I saw her discomfort at the sight of blood. Keeping my gaze on her, I smiled as she connected our earlier findings with the wound on Jake's leg. I won't bother with the report because I know it'll be nonsense. Did you nail your shoe to press on it while answering their security questions, trying to mask your lies? It had to backfire eventually, didn't it? I said, watching his face twist in agony, trying to induce sweat and a faster heart rate with harmless questions to make the results appear truthful. Jake's anguish softened slightly, giving way to despair as he glanced between Sarah and me. Yeah, I did cheat and showed Katie how to do it, but not for the reason you're thinking. Seriously, man, he confessed. All right, Sarah, brace yourself, I remarked as we both sat down again. Jake gently applied pressure to his foot to stop the bleeding. Observing Sarah's disapproving expression at the mess on the floor, I briefly considered suggesting she make him clean the carpet with his tongue. To his credit, Jake remained silent, offering no dramatization of this new revelation. We didn't know what questions you posed to the examiner. What's so complicated about asking if we had sex? I interjected. Sure, we probably would have aced that one, but we were concerned you'd delve into something more subtle, Jake began. Like what? I pressed. Well, like whether our behavior always aligns with the standards of a marital relationship, Jake said. But before he could finish, Sarah interjected angrily. Why else would you go to the trouble of sticking a damn nail in your shoe before the test? I pressed on. I'm guessing the fact that you arrived with the nail still lodged inside means you forgot to bring extra shoes or a pair of pliers. Planning ahead has never been your strong suit, has it? I added, addressing Sarah as I spoke. Please, honey, I didn't want to lose you. And Katie certainly didn't want to lose Dave, Jake pleaded. So, dear husband, what did you do that wouldn't measure up to the standards of a marriage? Sarah inquired sternly. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair and responded in a subdued voice. It was that day we pretended to be fooling around upstairs. We were just jumping on the bed. We were both fully clothed, he hurriedly clarified. We were bouncing on the bed, causing it to squeak. I can't even recall who initiated it, but somehow we began touching each other through our clothes. We both found it enjoyable. We were incredibly foolish. I felt a bit puzzled. I pride myself on being a good judge of character, and this rang true. If not, Jake was exceptionally skilled at conjuring excuses on the spot. I glanced at Sarah. Is this satisfactory? I asked. Not even close, she retorted. This pair has demonstrated such proficiency in deception and scheming that I am far from convinced. Jake, tend to your leg, apply some antiseptic, bandage it, and then I suggest you leave. I need time to think, plus there's the matter of cleaning up yet another one of your messes, Sarah snapped, indicating a stain on the carpet near Jake's foot. Despite his acting skills, the look of dread on Jake's face betrayed his deep concern about the fate of his marriage. I have a video, Sarah, he blurted out suddenly. What? I exclaimed. We sounded like a twisted duet. I installed a camera in our bedroom before we handcuffed Dave in the basement. I captured everything, Jake confessed before I could react. Then why the hell didn't you mention this a few days ago? I demanded. Jake didn't need to respond to that question. If the video depicted them pleasuring each other, even while fully clothed, it wouldn't be something two spouses eager to reconcile with their partners would want to share publicly. Personally, I strongly believe that the boundary of infidelity extends far beyond the physical act. Any form of intimacy, including a simple kiss, would constitute crossing a line that should not be crossed. I had the intention to do so, but Katie feared your reaction, he explained. We instructed Jake to tend to his leg and then present us with the video. While Jake was out of the room, I sent Katie a message. I couldn't resist adding to her already mounting anxiety. Remove the nail from your shoe and come over to Sarah's house. Jake is going to show us a video, I texted Katie. It was normally just a short walk from Lisa's house to ours, but it took a good 35 minutes before there was a knock on the door. Sarah opened it and welcomed in Katie and her sister Lisa. Katie's makeup was smudged and her eyes were red from crying. Lisa explained that Katie had panicked as soon as she read my message, realizing I had caught on to her scheme. Katie seemed far less composed about the test results than Jake had been upon his return home. Lisa glanced at me with raised eyebrows, acknowledging Katie's further self-destructive behavior. Katie tried to hug me, but I guided her to sit beside me on the couch. She kept studying my face, trying to gauge my feelings. I wondered if Lisa had any idea about the contents of the video. Sarah and I had spent the 35-minute wait discussing our likely course of action if the video confirmed Jake's claims. Sarah had decided she would likely forgive Jake for the bedroom incident, although she planned to let him stew for a bit. As for me, I was more conflicted. My initial emotional reaction was that my wife had betrayed me, something I had always deemed unforgivable. However, my logical reasoning was more composed. Katie had been a devoted wife for 24 years, and our children had made it clear they would be devastated if I didn't forgive her. A minute after everyone settled in, Jake arrived with his laptop, a USB flash drive sticking out from one port while a cable emerged from another. He set up the computer next to the TV and powered it up. I found it odd he didn't simply insert the flash drive directly into the TV, but then I remembered Sarah's comment about his lack of tech savvy. Once the image on the computer screen synchronized with the TV, Jake muttered another apology and hit play. Katie kept her gaze averted from everyone in the room, including the TV. She knew how unwavering I was about fidelity, making this an incredibly uncomfortable situation for her. Lisa watched the screen intently, seemingly unaware of what was about to unfold. Jake appeared more at ease again. He settled beside Sarah and attempted to hold her hand, but she withdrew it. The clip, which lasted about 10 minutes, essentially depicted what Jake had previously described. It was largely devoid of any eroticism. Within moments of its commencement, both protagonists appeared fully clothed, just as Jake had stated. Katie turned Jake onto his back, then positioned herself on top of him, echoing verbatim what I had heard while handcuffed in the basement. We observed that it was Jake who initiated the inappropriate contact, though Katie followed closely behind. This was incredibly difficult for me to witness for several reasons. Firstly, no man with any self-respect desires to see his wife in such a scenario with another man. Secondly, it triggered painful memories as I relived the words that had devastated me less than a week ago. It reignited the burning and throbbing sensation in my wrists, a painful reminder of my inability to prevent what was unfolding above me. Midway through, I shut my eyes tightly, attempting to block out the sounds. I didn't open them again until the room was filled with the silence that followed their shared climaxes. The silence felt deafening and all-encompassing. Even the normal sounds of breathing seemed absent. I wasn't alone in my turmoil. Glancing at the screen, I saw Katie and Jake quickly separate. The video paused, revealing an empty bed before fading to black. The uncomfortable silence lingered in the room for several tense moments. Once the clip concluded, Lisa cast a disgusted look at Katie while Jake looked hopefully at Sarah. Katie stared at a spot on the floor, her focus unwavering. The silence shattered when Sarah abruptly stood up, with Jake following suit. "You deceitful traitor!" Sarah's words cut through the air, shocking us all. It was the most severe thing I had ever heard her say, surpassing any prior expletives. Jake's expression betrayed his shock at her outburst. The sound of her open palm striking his cheek echoed like a gunshot. She was seething with anger. I've never seen someone so enraged, I thought to myself, watching the scene unfold. But Sarah wasn't finished. "Don't you dare touch me, you treacherous little scoundrel!" she hissed, her fury palpable. Jake dodged, narrowly avoiding a second slap. He winced, shifting his weight to his right leg, looking bewildered. "This entire video is fabricated," he insisted. "But why? We had invited Dave and Katie over later that evening, hadn't we? We were planning to relax on the patio, right?" Sarah's question came out more like a growl. "But due to the rain, we opted to stay indoors. Do you recall now?" Jake still seemed puzzled. And come over to Sarah's house. Jake is going to show us a video, I texted Katie. It was usually just a brief walk from Lisa's place to ours, but it took Katie and Lisa a good 35 minutes before there was a knock on the door. Sarah opened it and welcomed them in. Katie's makeup was smudged and her eyes were red from crying. Lisa explained that Katie had panicked as soon as she read my message, realizing I had caught on to her scheme. Katie seemed far less composed about the test results than Jake had been upon his return home. Lisa gave me a knowing look, acknowledging Katie's continued self-destructive behavior. Katie tried to hug me, but I guided her to sit beside me on the couch. She kept glancing at my face, trying to gauge my emotions. I wondered if Lisa had any clue about the contents of the video. Sarah and I had spent the 35-minute wait discussing our likely course of action if the video confirmed Jake's claims. Sarah had decided she would probably forgive Jake for the bedroom incident, although she planned to let him stew for a bit. As for me, I was more conflicted. My initial emotional reaction was that my wife had betrayed me, something I had always considered unforgivable. However, my logical reasoning was more composed. Katie had been a devoted wife for 24 years, and our children had made it clear they would be devastated if I didn't forgive her. A minute after everyone settled in, Jake arrived with his laptop, a USB flash drive sticking out from one port and a cable connected to another. He set up the computer next to the TV and powered it up. I found it odd he didn't simply insert the flash drive directly into the TV, but then I remembered Sarah's comment about his lack of tech savvy. Once the image on the computer screen synchronized with the TV, Jake muttered another apology and hit play. Katie kept her gaze averted from everyone in the room, including the TV. She knew how unwavering I was about fidelity, making this an incredibly uncomfortable situation for her. Lisa watched the screen intently, seemingly unaware of what was about to unfold. Jake appeared more at ease again. He settled beside Sarah and attempted to hold her hand, but she withdrew it. The clip, which lasted about 10 minutes, essentially depicted what Jake had previously described. It was largely devoid of any eroticism. Within moments of its commencement, both protagonists appeared fully clothed, just as Jake had stated. Katie turned Jake onto his back, then positioned herself on top of him, echoing verbatim what I had heard while handcuffed in the basement. We observed that it was Jake who initiated the inappropriate contact, though Katie followed closely behind. This was incredibly difficult for me to witness for several reasons. Firstly, no man with any self-respect desires to see his wife in such a scenario with another man. Secondly, it triggered painful memories as I relived the words that had devastated me less than a week ago. It reignited the burning and throbbing sensation in my wrists, a painful reminder of my inability to prevent what was unfolding above me. Midway through, I shut my eyes tightly, attempting to block out the sounds. I didn't open them again until the room was filled with the silence that followed their shared climaxes. The silence felt deafening and all-encompassing. Even the normal sounds of breathing seemed absent. I wasn't alone in my turmoil. Glancing at the screen, I saw Katie and Jake quickly separate. The video paused, revealing an empty bed before fading to black. The uncomfortable silence lingered in the room for several tense moments. Once the clip concluded, Lisa cast a disgusted look at Katie, while Jake looked hopefully at Sarah. Katie stared at a spot on the floor, her focus unwavering. The silence shattered when Sarah abruptly stood up, with Jake following suit. "You deceitful traitor!" Sarah's words cut through the air, shocking us all. It was the most severe thing I had ever heard her say, surpassing any prior expletives. Jake's expression betrayed his shock at her outburst. The sound of her open palm striking his cheek echoed like a gunshot. She was seething with anger. I've never seen someone so enraged, I thought to myself, watching the scene unfold. But Sarah wasn't finished. "Don't you dare touch me, you treacherous little scoundrel," she hissed, her fury palpable. Jake dodged, narrowly avoiding a second slap. He winced, shifting his weight to his right leg, looking bewildered. "This entire video is fabricated," he insisted. "But why? We had invited Dave and Katie over later that evening, hadn't we? We were planning to relax on the patio, right? Sarah's question came out more like a growl, but due to the rain, we opted to stay indoors. Do you recall now? Jake still seemed puzzled. Jake nodded, trying to look composed, while Sarah pointed angrily at the TV screen. Look at this. The sunlight streaming through the window shows it's morning. This window doesn't get direct sunlight until the afternoon. You made this whole thing up, didn't you? Jake's expression shifted from confusion to horror, confirming their deceit. The abrupt shift from considering forgiveness to resolute anger was disorienting. I despised feeling humiliated. There was only one explanation: they tampered with the video. The following moments were tense. Katie let out a loud groan and bolted out the door, while Lisa sat there, stunned. Sarah advanced towards Jake, who attempted to use me as a shield. I took a step forward and brought my foot down hard on his injured leg. He doubled over, and as his head came forward, it collided with my knee, causing his head to snap back and blood to spray from his flattened nose. He joined Katie in a hurried escape, leaving the three of us in a grim tableau. Sarah stood trembling, tears streaming down her face. For the second time in a week, the man I had loved unconditionally for nearly 25 years shattered my heart. The realization that this was the same person who had kept me hopeful between crises was doubly shocking. Lisa remained seated, seemingly stunned by her sister's foolishness and likely horrified by the lies Katie had undoubtedly fed her over the past week. I approached Sarah and enveloped her in a hug, holding her as she trembled uncontrollably, mourning the demise of her marriage. I've always preferred to grieve in solitude, saving it for later, but in this moment I remained composed, clinically calm amidst the chaos. Already I was formulating a list of questions and regretting letting Jake leave with only a broken nose. I glanced at Lisa, wondering why she stayed. Was it to offer apologies for her role in this debacle? Or was she unable to tear her gaze away from the catastrophe unfolding before her? Unable to answer without breaking my connection with Sarah, which I had no intention of doing, I let my thoughts race. It became clear that while Jake was smart and manipulative, he wasn't as clever as Sarah. If she hadn't noticed the sunlight clue, we might still be part of two seemingly successful couples. In hindsight, the doctored video was quite clever, yet I struggled with the fact that I had been deceived. I was certain the soundtrack matched what I had heard that weekend, leading to an inevitable conclusion. That certainty fit neatly into my mind like the final piece of a puzzle. They either overlaid the old soundtrack onto new footage or replicated the words and sounds in real time. Suddenly, Jake's action of playing the file through his laptop made sense. After giving Sarah one final hug, I gently lowered her onto the couch and made my way to my laptop. I was relieved it hadn't gone into sleep mode, which would have required a password to access. How silly, I thought, realizing that if it had, I could have viewed the flash drive on another device. My mind was foggy from everything that had happened. With my fingers deftly navigating the keys and mouse, I closed the software and opened the video file on the screen, revealing that we had just watched a fabricated video. There were also files labeled 2 through 7. Two more files caught my attention, one titled Me and Katie Original and the other labeled Basement Footage. I clicked on the latter and scrolled along the progress bar about 3/4 of the way through. There I was, suspended from that cursed bar in the basement, captured by a hidden camera. I closed the clip, overwhelmed by the flood of unpleasant memories. The file labeled Original was significantly larger than the others. Seeing Sarah's approving nod, I pressed play. It revealed a view overlooking Jake and Sarah's bedroom. The perspective differed from video 8, prompting me to rush down the hallway to compare the two views. After a bit of detective work, I deduced that the original camera was likely concealed on a bookshelf, while subsequent versions were probably captured by a tripod-mounted camera at the foot of the bed. Returning to the living room, I noted that the timer at the bottom of the screen showed 1 minute and 5 seconds with over an hour remaining. It was evident that Jake lacked editing skills. I fast-forwarded to 20 minutes before the end, then progressed in 30-second intervals until the action began. Backtracking 30 seconds, I settled onto the sofa beside Sarah, holding her hand for mutual support. Let's just say the original version differed significantly from the subsequent ones. The only commonality was the initial setup. With Katie pushing Jake onto his back, about 25 seconds later, both Sarah and Lisa gasped simultaneously. The camera angle revealed Katie's face as she turned her head to the side, glancing down and to the left of the camera. There was a vent at floor level that carried the crucial sounds of their prank to the basement below, where I was held captive. The expression on Katie's face, the one that caused the gasps, was repulsive. My supposedly loving wife knew precisely what I endured in the basement that night, and she relished it. Katie took pleasure in mentally tormenting me. I battled a strong urge to vomit. When Jake noticed where Katie's gaze was fixed, he smirked maliciously. He seemed too stunned to check the time, but a few seconds must have passed. We all observed as Jake turned Katie onto her back, kneeling beside her and fiddling with his belt and trousers. On the screen, Katie lifted her skirt and ripped off her underwear, tossing them aside. The remainder of the video unfolded pretty much as I had imagined during my time in the basement. With hindsight, Katie's callous enjoyment of the situation likely emboldened Jake and triggered the subsequent chain of events. That being said, if I were a betting man, I'd wager that this was Jake and Katie's first encounter. The video certainly depicted how what began as a relatively innocent situation swiftly spiraled out of control. I was fairly certain that Jake realized he derived pleasure from humiliating others, but it was probable that Katie stumbled upon her kink that day. After the spectacle concluded, Lisa inquired about the prospect of a future between Katie and me, her demeanor suggesting she wasn't hopeful. I paused for at least a minute to sort through my emotions. No, not in this lifetime, Lisa. Ironically, if Katie had approached me later and explained that it started as a joke but escalated out of control, as it appeared in the original video, then perhaps I would have considered forgiveness. However, they colluded to rewrite history and outsmart the lie detector test. This level of deceit is beyond what I ever believed she was capable of. It makes me question how well I truly know her. What else has she lied to me about? Moreover, we haven't yet viewed all the workout videos. After her initial slip-up, she returned and engaged in at least one more physical encounter with Jake. How many times did they engage in such activities during these workout sessions? Then there was the expression on her face. I'm sure you noticed it too, Lisa. I'm sorry, but it's over between us. Lisa nodded solemnly. Please refrain from publicly shaming her, Jim. It would only embarrass your children. If you provide me with a copy of the video, I'll calmly explain the situation to Mom and Dad, Katie, and even your children if necessary. Katie's letter lingered on my desk for days. The sorrow and regret in her words were clear, but they couldn't erase the betrayal. My heart had hardened, and no amount of pleading could soften it. I was done with her. The divorce proceedings were straightforward. Katie didn't contest anything, and we divided our assets amicably. It was a quiet end to what had once been a vibrant, loving marriage. I decided to stay in the house we had shared. It was a painful reminder of what I had lost, but it was also where my children had grown up. Eric and Patty visited occasionally, their initial anger at their mother giving way to a reluctant understanding. They needed time, just as I did. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, a knock at the door startled me. It was Lisa. She had been a steady presence throughout the ordeal, offering support and understanding. We had grown close, our shared pain creating a bond neither of us had anticipated. "Hi, Jim," she said, offering a tentative smile. "Hi, Lisa, come on in," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. We settled into the living room, the familiar silence between us comfortable now. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "I'm getting there," I admitted. "It's still hard, but I'm finding my way." Lisa nodded, her gaze drifting to the pictures on the mantel. "It's a lot to process," she said softly. "We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. It felt good to have someone who understood, who had been through the same hell and come out the other side." As the night wore on, I realized how much I valued her presence. She had become a beacon of hope in my darkest times. Over the following months, our friendship deepened. We spent more time together, finding solace in each other's company. Sarah, meanwhile, was rebuilding her life. She had moved on from Jake, determined to find happiness on her terms. As for Jake, he remained a ghost, his absence a relief. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved out of state, trying to start anew. Good riddance, I thought. He had done enough damage. Katie continued to live in her small apartment, a shadow of her former self. She reached out occasionally, trying to mend fences, but I kept my distance. My heart was no longer open to her. I wished her no ill will, but I couldn't forget the pain she had caused. Life slowly returned to a new normal. I threw myself into my work, finding purpose and distraction there. I rekindled old friendships, rediscovered hobbies, and even started dating again. It was strange at first, navigating the world of middle-aged dating, but it was also exhilarating. I was determined to embrace this new chapter, to find joy where I could. Lisa and I remained close, our bond growing stronger with each passing day. There was a comfort in our shared history, a mutual respect that had been forged in the fires of betrayal and heartache. We supported each other, leaned on each other, and slowly, I began to see a future where happiness was possible again. One sunny afternoon, we found ourselves at the park, watching the ducks glide across the pond. It was a simple pleasure, but it felt profound. As we sat on the bench, I turned to Lisa. "Thank you for being here, for everything," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She smiled, her eyes warm and understanding. "You're welcome, Jim. You've been there for me, too." We sat in companionable silence, the sun setting in a blaze of colors. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. The past was behind me, a painful chapter that had finally closed. The future was a blank page, full of possibilities. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I embraced my new life. I was stronger now, more resilient. The pain had changed me, but it had also taught me to value the good things, the people who truly mattered. In the end, it wasn't about finding someone new to fill the void Katie had left. It was about rediscovering myself, finding my own path, and learning to trust again. And with Lisa by my side, I knew I could face whatever the future held. Together we moved forward, leaving the past where it belonged. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I had lost a lot, but I had also gained something invaluable, a second chance at happiness. The story of Katie and me had ended, but my story was far from over. And as I looked at the woman beside me, I realized that sometimes the best beginnings come after the hardest endings.